as far as expectations goes, look, I mean, the schedule is brutal. The schedule is a really tough schedule, and this team upgraded a quarterback. But look, that was a low bar to clear. I mean, they were a disaster at quarterback last year with Daniel Jones. Obviously, that went terribly, and now he's gone. But anyone would have been an upgrade. This year is all about the future and Jaxson Dart and what they can build with guys like Abdul Carter, Jaxson Dart, Malik Nabers. I mean, these guys are the foundational players for a team that will not be a contender this year, but perhaps if they wind up hitting on Jaxson Dart, could be next year or the year after. I mean, look at what Washington did with Jaden Daniels. Obviously, he had an enormously impressive rookie year. I don't see Jaxson Dart having that type of year, or having those type of opportunities. But this is a year to kind of set the stage for a franchise that's trying to get back to where it once was. And not in a long time. I mean, it's been a decade plus of misery for the Giants, obviously.
I get that schedule is tough, but 5.5. My boy Brady, we're talking about it. That's 6 wins, and I'm like, I get it, but divisional games, Dallas, Washington, maybe they take a step back. I got to tell you, Darryl, like, I'm looking at the Giants at 5.5, going, can't we just get 6? I think we can. Like, I actually, I'm not going to say winning the division, but 6 wins. And I know the games, you look at the schedule and go, God, that's a murderer's row. Like, I was looking at that going, oh my God, please bring on the Saints. But 6, can we get there? I think we can.
Yeah, I think they can win 6 games. They're not going to win 8 or 9 games. If they win 7 games, it would be an enormous accomplishment. Certainly, I think that it would surprise nobody if they won 4 or fewer. But 6, they play the Bears, they play the Raiders. Those are road games, though, you got to remember. They play the Patriots, another road game. So a lot of their quote-unquote easier games are on the road. And so that has to be kind of taken into account. But their home schedule is really nasty, and they don't get the bye, as you see there, until week 14. And then, New Orleans, again, on the road. So that is a really, really challenging schedule, particularly at home. And they could get to 6. Yeah, I think at some point they're going to have to. It depends on what they get out of Russell Wilson, right? I mean, we know he's not a star anymore, but they could get functional play out of him, and they have a great receiver in Malik Nabers, and maybe they win with defense. I think that's the hope.
What about Brian Daboll's future, Darryl? There's a lot of talk that he's on the hot seat, but I think if ownership is realistic, and it's kind of what you're alluding to here, we don't expect him to win 9 games, but if he wins 6 or 7, I hope he keeps his job.
Oh, absolutely. I think, look, coming off 4 wins, or 3-14 last year, coming off 6 wins the year prior, I think he keeps his job with 7 wins, no doubt. 6 wins, probably. If you're talking 4 or 5 wins, I think then it becomes, how does Jaxson Dart perform? Because if they win if they're that bad, then they're going to pull Russell Wilson and put Jaxson Dart in. There's a world in which they could win 5 games and he keeps his job if Jaxson Dart performs well enough to give this ownership duo and John Mara and Steve Tisch hope that this coaching staff can stick with this, can build something with this kid. But yeah, certainly, I think 6 or 7 games, he keeps his job. That's not going to be an easy task.
I got to ask you, Darryl, like, the running back situation is a very interesting one. And you sit there, and Cam Scatterbo at Arizona State, I love this kid. Like, he was absolutely amazing. He's questionable right now, but how do you think this is going to play out? Running back by committee, I know fantasy owners and stuff, like, who's going to be the guy for the Giants? But right now, it looks like you guys have multiple options. But how do you think the running back situation is going to play out for the G-men?
It depends a lot on Cam Scatterbo. It really does. We don't know the severity or nature of this injury right now. That is a big issue. Devin Singletary, we know what he is. He's not a great back at this point in his career. Tyrone Tracy, 5th-round rookie last year, did a really nice job. But is he a true number 1 back? I mean, the Giants have decided they don't necessarily want a guy like that. That's why they let Saquon Barkley go. But if they can get a nice tandem there out of Scatterbo and Tracy, maybe they can get something out of their running game. Keep teams honest. back off, make teams play closer to the line and open things up for Malik Nabers.
Darryl, the one real bright spot for this team, and I think they had a good draft, which included the aforementioned Cam Scattaboo. But this defensive front, the front seven, really, it's one of the best units in the league.
Yeah.
But my question is, how far can that take them? I mean, obviously, it's going to have to play a big role if this team is going to get to 6 or 7 wins. What are the impressions? How have they looked in camp so far, the defensive front?
Great. I mean, albeit against a line that is not great. An offensive line. So that's part of it. They have to be able to stop the run a lot better than they did last year. Those guys admit that. Dexter Lawrence said, look, if we don't stop the run, it doesn't matter how good we are as a pass rush unit. So that is part of the rub here for this defense. They rushed the passer pretty well last year. I mean, but the guys they have up front now with the addition of Abdul Carter, who has looked fantastic, that's the clear strength of the team. And I think they could carry this defense. Now, will that be enough to carry them to wins overall? We'll see.
He is Darryl Slater. You can find him at nj.com. He writes for the Star Ledger in New Jersey. He covers the New York Giants. We'll have him for another segment, find out his thoughts more about this team's future in 2025 when we return right here on In-Game Live Gameday. Continuing here on In-Game Live Gameday on SportsGrid with Darryl Slater. He is a reporter for the New York Giants. You can find him on Twitter at Darryl Slater. That is DARRYLSLATER. And Darryl, thank you again so much for sticking around and lending some insight onto this team. And expectations are very low. The win total, as we have discussed, is 5.5. The number to win the division is 25-1. And you talk about the conference and the Super Bowl, it's even more ridiculous than that. So, what are some good bets that we can make on this team? You brought up Abdul Carter, and you brought up how good he has looked in camp. Now, again, he's competing against an offensive line that is not necessarily a strong point for this New York Giants team, but maybe a defensive rookie of the year, something like that. Where do you see some markets where we might be able to bet on success for the New York Giants?
Well, I think he will be one of the favorites for Defensive Rookie of the Year, if not the top favorite. Another one, I think Malik Nabers catches. I mean, I don't know what they're going to set the number at, but it is going to be high. They are going to make him a huge part of their offense, if only because they don't have another true weapon, and that's going to be a big part of what they do if they have any success. They're going to have to throw him the ball a ton. So those would be one on offense, one on defense there. I would kind of maybe steer clear of Jaxson Dart type numbers in terms of betting, because we just don't know. I mean, remember, a hot seat regime that if they can win some games with Russell Wilson, they're going to be content to not play Jaxson Dart. So they're going to have to lose, or obviously Russell Wilson get hurt, for Jaxson Dart to get out there. So that's a bit of a wild card for how much he's going to play.
Darryl, I got to ask you too, everyone's talking about Nabers and he'll be a big fantasy guy, but Nabers, there's got to be somebody else. Who would be your sleeper pick for people in these drafts to say, you know what, this guy actually might be a bit of a nice late round selection for the Giants? Nabers gets all the headlines, but somebody else has to catch balls too.
Sure. I think, obviously, Darius Slayton was their number 2 receiver last year. We kind of know what he is at this point. He's a solid but not spectacular player. The guy that watches Jalen Hyatt through 2 years has been a pretty big disappointment. And they traded up to get him in the 3rd round 2 years ago, has not really done anything. He's a nice deep threat, and he's sort of rounded out his game a little bit, gotten better at running other routes. He's bulked up. He was a super skinny kid. If he can translate that into success on the field, more opportunities, he could be a guy who could pop a little bit. He's not ever going to be their number 1 option, but he could work his way into a number 2 type role. So he would be a guy who definitely would qualify as a sleeper, considering how little he's done through 2 years.
Darryl, if you look at that week 1 matchup with the Washington Commanders, it's an interesting game. It's obviously starting the season with a division game, and you're on the road at Washington. They're getting 6.5 points. Who knows? Maybe by the time week 1 rolls around, it's up to a full touchdown of 7 points. But the New York Giants, back in the Daniel Jones regime, that was one team he had a great deal of success against, the Washington Commanders. And you wonder, that's probably going to carry over somewhat. Daboll was there for a few of those good games and what have you. I mean, would that be a situation where you're looking to take the points in week 1 against Washington?
Yeah, sure. I think so. I think if the number is high enough, like 7, I think that could certainly warrant that. I don't think they're going to go down and win that game. I think they could contend, but Jaden Daniels had a great rookie year, but we got to remember, this is a very strong defensive front that's going to wreak havoc on more experienced quarterbacks. And so we know he's an ascending player. He has not yet arrived. I think maybe they can perhaps rattle him a little bit. Maybe that's a bit of like wishful thinking, just looking at it from that perspective. But 7's a pretty big number if it gets to that point. I don't necessarily know that Washington covers that. We'll see how things kind of round out here a little bit, but it looks like the Giants could have a pretty strong defensive front that could cause problems, like I said, for more experienced quarterbacks, let alone a guy who has only been in this a year.
Brady's a smart guy, and he was talking about Washington maybe regressing a little bit. I think the Eagles, asking them to win 12 games, I know they're the Super Bowl champs, anything could happen. This division, too, it's hard to repeat. So I guess looking at this division, is there like one bet, like Washington, are they going to regress? The Eagles? That's why I like the Giants, because I think these other teams at the top, I don't like their wins totals. But what would be your favorite bet out of those? Like, do you think the Eagles are going to run away with this thing? I'm not so sure they're going to get to 12 wins. What do you think about them, Washington and the Cowboys, the other teams in the division?
I think the Eagles will probably win the division. 12 might be a bit of a stretch. Like you said, perhaps due for a regression there. The Cowboys, so much depends on Micah Parsons, right? I mean, they could be very vulnerable. I mean, and that, the Giants obviously playing them twice. That could factor into, hey, the Giants maybe steal one of those games and you get to that 6 and they clear the 5.5 numbers. So that is something to watch, obviously. Like, what are they going to get out of Mike? Like, how happy is Micah Parsons even going to be when he gets out there and plays? Even if he does play the whole year, is this guy going to be discontent the entire season? So that could be a huge, huge problem for Dallas, quite obviously.
Yeah, it almost seems like Dallas is the pick to make by default. This team, nobody's repeated as a division champ, since 2004. I mean, Washington ascended so high last year. You can't believe they're going to maintain that level of success. They got to come down a little bit. The Giants, we don't think we can get all the way home with them. Dallas, at better than 5-1's got to be your division champ bet. We'll let you get out of here, Darryl. I know you got a family that's asleep, and they've forced you down into the basement down there while you're making noise and everything like that. Yep. Let's hear your prediction. How many wins do the New York Giants get in 2025?
I think they'll come up with 5 wins, just short of the 5.5 number. They could beat Chicago. They could beat Vegas on the road. They could beat the Patriots. But that home schedule is so tough. And even some of those road games that look winnable, like New Orleans, sure, they could win that game, but, it's not a gimme. Chicago, another one that's not necessarily a gimme. So I'll give them 5-12, and that's right in the line for whether Brian Daboll keeps his job. A lot depends on how Jaxson Dart performs when he does get in there.
Well, that's a good answer because, if Daboll is right there on the fence, that's a good, that's a lot of engagement and keeps you busy working there for NJ.com and the Star Ledger. You'll have a lot to write about if they finish at 5-12. Thank you so much. That is Darryl Slater. Find him on Twitter at Darryl Slater as we continue here on In-Game Live Game Day on SportsGrid.